What if your greatest failure, your deepest and most consuming moment of despair was given teeth, claws, and infinite power? What if the one thing you hated most in the world, the person who ruined your life, was also the one person that gave you a purpose? We're diving into the tragic, hyper-violent, and surprisingly resonant history of the one and only Eddie Brock, the original Venom. This character isn't just a monster, he's a living, breathing embodiment of toxic codependency. Get ready to ask yourself, do you control the darkness, or does the darkness control you? Welcome back to Marvel Echoes Resonance. I'm Will, and today we're talking about a character whose origin story perfectly encapsulates our core mission. Venom is not an iconic villain. He is a foundation of an entire galactic legacy, all sparked by a single catastrophic human failure. To understand the monster, you first have to understand the man. Edward Charles Allen Eddie Brock wasn't some mad scientist. He was a journalist at the Daily Globe. But Eddie wasn't driven by a pursuit of truth. He was driven by a deep need for validation, particularly from his father, Carl Brock. He channeled his frustration into obsessive weightlifting, a huge internal reservoir of physical intensity and seething resentment. His moral compass had already degraded, prioritizing praise over ethical journalism. This led to the Sin-Eater Hoax. Desperate for a career-making story, Eddie rushed to publish an exclusive based on false confession of a delusional man. The definitive ruin of Eddie Brock's life came when Spider-Man intervened, capturing the real serial killer, Stanley Carter. Spider-Man's perfectly ethical action instantly and thoroughly discredited Brock's sensationalized articles, leading to his swift firing and the collapse of his professional reputation, and the end of his marriage to Anne Weying. This is the primary spark. Now, here's the crucial bit. Brock, consumed by ego, chose to blame Spider-Man, not for the mistake of trusting a bad source, but for publicly exposing the mistake and finalizing his destruction. Spider-Man was the ultimate scapegoat. Disgraced and eventually diagnosed with cancer, Brock fell into suicidal depression. He sought salvation and forgiveness, going to a church to pray. And this, friends, is where the destiny kicks in. Unbeknownst to Eddie, the alien Clintar symbiote, which Peter had recently rejected, was waiting in the rafters of that very church. The symbiote, having also been rejected and sharing an intense personal hatred for the one who cast it out, sensed Brock's profound, all-consuming rage. The alien bonded instantly with Brock, offering him a form of salvation from his suicidal ideation and granting him immense power. The union was established, from its very start, as a profound, toxic, emotional dependency, a form of a salvation achieved through mutual destructive rage. The full definitive introduction of the character we now know as Venom was in Amazing Spider-Man number 300 way back in May of 1988, and it was a cultural event. Writer David Michelinie devised a psychological engine of shared vengeance, and artist Todd McFarlane, the guy who did Spawn, defined the iconic, aggressive, monstrous look. Venom immediately launched a campaign of psychological warfare against Peter, invading his domestic life and terrorizing Mary Jane Watson. The success of this psychological attack forced Spider-Man to officially ditch the black suit and return to his classic red and blue. The immense popularity of this character caused an immediate creative ripple effect. This popularity required the lore to rapidly expand, leading directly into the creation of Cletus Cassidy. Cassidy would bond with the offspring of Venom symbiote and become the character we know as Carnage in The Amazing Spider-Man number 344 back in March of 1991. Carnage was conceived to provide a threat more chaotic and sadistic than even Venom, demonstrating how Brock's origin immediately generated radical narrative shifts. To maintain the narrative tension, Eddie Brock had to evolve. The first major shift occurred when he brokered an uneasy truce with Spider-Man and moved to San Francisco. Here, he consciously sought to use his power to protect rather than take personal revenge, thereby establishing himself as the Lethal Protector in the 1993 limited series Venom, Lethal Protector. This arc defined the character as an anti-hero, operating outside the law but with a desire to protect the innocent. This was crucial for the 90s era, cementing the idea that Venom was the ultimate anti-hero, often working with a violent code of ethics. Very similar to Punisher, as we talked about in a previous episode. The Lethal Protector arc was also important because it laid the foundation for the entire Clintar mythos, as the shadowy Life Foundation forcibly extracted seeds from Venom, creating the first 5 offspring symbiotes: Scream, Phage, Riot, Lasher, and Agony. These offspring served as an external manifestation of Eddie's uncontrolled rage and anxiety, contrasting them against his managed rage. So that lays the foundation, but the most incredible part of Eddie Brock's saga is the echo that defines his later life. For years, Eddie struggled to manage the symbiote. His entire identity was rooted in the struggle against a toxic partner. The internal conflict was so profound it was explicitly explored in arcs like Venom Separation Anxiety, which focused on the painful psychological separation of Eddie from the Clintar, framing the event as a metaphor for agony of breaking a toxic relationship or managing a debilitating addiction. This really highlights that the core of the character is the perpetual nonlinear journey towards redemption. It's a grueling, vicious cycle of trying and failing and trying again and again and again. The cycle led directly into the next major transformation, Anti-Venom. You see, years after his initial separation from the black suit, Eddie developed cancer. When the Venom symbiote later attacked Brock, the Light Force reacted with the Clintar remnants in his system, creating a wholly new being, the White Anti-Venom. This was the perfect thematic inversion of his origin. The black suit with its toxic salvation, the white suit possessed a unique, curative and cleansing properties, symbolizing purified, sacrificial healing. The peak of this selfishness came during the massive Spider Island event, where Brock sacrificed the entirety of the Anti-Venom symbiote to create a universal cure. It was a powerful, perfect echo of a redeemed Eddie Brock, finally using power derived from his trauma to become a selfless healer. But here's the secret. Eddie's destiny was always grander than a street-level heroism. His final spectacular ripple was a confrontation on a galactic scale. He evolved beyond being a mere host and ultimately ascended to the role of the King in Black, the sovereign ruler of an entire Clintar hive mind. This ascension confirms the feeling that Brock's path was one of a cosmic inevitability, that his original choice to bond with the symbiote set him on a cosmic destiny. Now, even though he was a cosmic god, and I say was, you have to read the story, his narrative still loops back to conflict. In the current era, and this is a huge development, Eddie Brock becomes the reluctant host of the chaotic and homicidal Carnage symbiote after the events of the Venom War. Why? Because even the ultimate power, Eddie remains tethered to the perpetual balancing act of managing a toxic power. He is currently attempting the impossible, channeling Carnage's insatiable bloodlust into a narrow, justifiable purpose by feeding the chaotic symbiote only the lives of serial killers. This return to managing a monstrous, addicted partner is the final dark echo of his original decision to bond with Venom. And the story doesn't stop there. Despite this dark path, Eddie's influence is so immense that he's currently operating as a member of the New Avengers, attempting to harness his volatile power for planetary good. The dual status of his host in the galaxy's most chaotic entity and a card-carrying Avenger perfectly captures the duality that has defined him ever since the first day he said, "We are Venom." His existence, even as a god, remains a perpetual trauma management cycle. We've seen heroes like Wolverine constantly fight to reclaim their humanity from violence, but Eddie Brock's fight is unique. He is perpetually trying to control the darkness he willingly embraced. So I'll leave you with this question. Given his constant failure and reliance on monster-level violence, does Eddie Brock truly earn the title of hero? Or is he merely a walking catastrophe who occasionally points his rage at the right target? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for listening to this episode of Marvel Echoes. If you enjoyed the deep dive into the legacy of the Clintar King, make sure you subscribe and follow so you don't miss any of our future episodes. Leaving a like and review really helps the podcast grow, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Leave a comment for future episode ideas, or if you think Venom is secretly one of the greatest heroes of all time. And for more content, including full deep dive articles, visual infographics on everything we discussed today, be sure to visit our website in the links below. Till next time, true believers, make mine Marvel.